That's all I'm really talking about, and I have full faith in this process, if it is allowed to proceed without undue interventionism, and this anxiety leading to way too much prescription in terms of what we should do, what we should not do, when in fact it was only a few days ago, certainly less than a month ago, that stability was viewed as an overriding consideration to the exclusion of things that are considered to be virtuous elsewhere in the world. I think this way of approaching the needs of the region on the basis of differing standards is something that ought to change. And I think it's about time for this process of change, driven by strong and genuine desire on the part of Arab citizens to enjoy that which is enjoyed by other citizens around the world. Citizens' rights, as I said, basically and most fundamentally. I think this ought to be respected.
Bruno Darroux.
Mr. Minister, the Palestinian territories are placed at the heart of the Arab world, very close to Egypt, obviously, but also to Jordan, to Syria. There are some demonstrations in Yemen as well. There are political changes in Jordan. Do you think that the Arab world is currently starting to make its first steps towards a democratization of the region? And what impact would that have on your government?
I think one can say, based on developments in weeks, that winds of change are blowing in the region. And as I said, the desire to change should not be viewed with hostility. What people throughout that region are looking for is simply consistent with what exists elsewhere in the world. World has changed. Governance processes, in terms of their adequacy, have changed, and so dramatically, because of advances in communication and technology. The world has become, indeed, literally, one big global village where people in the Arab world know very well how governance processes are constructed elsewhere in the world. And I see that, not only people in the Arab world, but elsewhere in the world as well. These things have consequences. And I think the process of globalization proceeded so fast, and it outpaced by far the capacity of domestic, i.e. national governance frameworks, indeed also international governance frameworks, to adjust to the change that has taken place and the consequences of openness. That's what we're really looking at here. Response to that, in a fundamental sense, this is natural, it's normal, it ought to be allowed to proceed, it ought to be honored.
The Palestinians were the first to experiment with legislative elections, free and open and very honest elections. Unfortunately, they led to a very deep fracture in the Palestinian side. Is your optimistic vision not obviated by what happened in Palestine?
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry, I did not get.
When
the Palestinians elected their legislative council in 2006, these are the most democratic elections in the Arab world. And unfortunately, the process actually led, a year and a half later, to a breakup, a very significant political breakup. So is this not the case that if there were to be legislative elections in Egypt, for example, the Islamic fundamentalists might have a bigger weight, and could this not lead to blockages?
Just because it happened in Palestine does not mean that it should be expected to happen elsewhere in the Arab world. What happened in Palestine is most regrettable, and it happened under the influence, again, of international requirements superimposed on top of the complexity of the situation of Palestine to begin with. The fact that happened in Palestine should not mean that it has to happen elsewhere, nor should it suggest that it will always happen this way in Palestine, if only we can get on with it and have elections again. Even we Palestinians are not discouraged enough with our experience with elections. We want to have elections again. As a matter of fact, we're going to have municipal elections within a matter of months, and we're beginning to think seriously about the need to call general elections again. Now, if we're discouraged so much by the first experience with having elections, we're talking about the elections of 2006, why should we be thinking about having them again? But we are, because we think it's important. We think it's important to have fair, open elections and inclusive elections, and to have those happen with regularity by dates certain. I think this is a key safety valve for any system, and it provides for stability and great stability from a longer term point of view, for sure.
Pour prolonger la question de
To
Paris,
prolong
c'est
his
aussi le
question,
risque, du moment
it's
où on
also
joue
the
le jeu de la
risk,
démocratie, c'est
if
le
you're
risque
playing
que
democracy, there's also a risk
l'islamisme
that
politique prenne toute
political
sa place
Islamism
dans le jeu
could
politique.
come into play in
Alors,
the
est-ce que vous
political
craignez, par
world.
exemple, pour revenir à
Are
la
you afraid
situation
to get back into
égyptienne,
the
est-ce que vous
situation in
craignez,
Egypt? Would you
on
be
parle beaucoup des
afraid,
frères musulmans qui seraient prêts à
the
jouer le jeu,
Muslim brothers
rentrer dans le jeu
who
politique égyptien?
ready
Est-ce
to
que
enter
vous
into
craignez,
the
est-ce que
political
vous
life in
redoutez une
Egypt?
vraie
Are
menace
you afraid of a
islamiste comme on en
real
entend
Islamic
beaucoup parler
threat
en Égypte?
in Egypt?
I am all for open and inclusive elections. Elections lose much of their value from a good governance point of view if they are exclusionary, if they are conducted while excluding certain factions. I mean, if certain factions and parties choose not to participate in elections, that's their choice. The job of a government, a well-functioning government, is to provide the legal framework, a legal framework that's credible and convincing, and the assurance that elections will be conducted in a fair, open way. Then it's up to factions to participate. I think it's important to have open and inclusive elections, regardless of what the outcome is or maybe. You know, it happened in other countries around the world.
Monsieur le Premier ministre, quand même.
If I may, I do not believe, we should continue to worry about having elections because we worry that a certain faction may take over, may win the elections. If they do win, they win, and let them govern. The important thing is to have elections again. That's the key, and not to have elections only once. So Muslim Brotherhood gets to power, and then we never have elections again. The important thing is to commit to a democratic process and to have the inclusiveness of elections based on full acceptance of elections becoming a permanent element of the architecture, the political framework. That's very important.
Monsieur le Premier ministre,
Bruno Darou.
justement, vous avez évoqué
Mr.
cette
Prime
hypothèse,
Minister,
si les
you
frères
talked about the
musulmans
hypothesis if the
arrivent
Muslim
même
Brothers
partiellement, pas
even
totalement, mais
partially
avec d'autres
came
forces
into power with
politiques au
other
pouvoir,
political forces,
dans le
if
cadre
they
de
did
futures élections
into
qu'on
power
peut
in future
imaginer,
elections that might
on
occur.
sait quand même que les frères
We
musulmans
know that
ont
the
des
Muslim
liens
Brothers have
proches,
links,
on va
very
dire,
close
avec le
links
Hamas.
with
Est-ce que cette
Hamas.
perspective ne vous
Would this
inquiète pas?
perspective not worry you?
I do not worry about outcomes of due democratic processes, including elections. If that's what people want, that's what people should get. I'm a firm believer in this. If you accept elections as an instrument of a well-functioning democracy, you should be willing to accept the outcome. And we should have elections again with regularity, by date certain, if we want to really be able to manage. Again, after all, these are the very same standards on the basis of which elections happen elsewhere in the world. To continue to think of the Arab world differently, where stability in the way that it is viewed by important countries around the world is thought of as something that should supersede other important principles of governance, I think is wrong, and wrong-headed policy. And it will continue to play in the direction of reinforcing the impression that the world continues to deal with us Arabs through different prisms. We, like the rest of humanity, would want to live by the same rules. Good governance should mean the same thing. It means government that is responsive to people's needs and aspirations, both material and, more important, political. I think that's really the issue for us. We should have elections. If Muslim Brotherhood wins the elections, so be it. The important thing is for there to be a commitment to have elections again, and not to have them only once. We're having difficulties in Palestine. We had elections in 2006. We want to have elections again in West Bank and Gaza, despite the separation that's taking place. And I believe from a mechanical point of view, it is eminently possible to have elections, notwithstanding the separation, except that Hamas would not agree to have
Monsieur le
elections.
Premier ministre, donc à vous entendre, quand on
Listening
entend
to
à
you,
Téhéran
and when we hear
les
what's being said in
dirigeants
Tehran, the
iraniens
leaders
qui
in
disent
Iran,
ce qui se
and
passe,
they
ce qui
say,
est en train de se passer
what's
en ce
currently
moment en
going
Égypte,
on in Egypt
c'est une victoire de la
is a
révolution
victory
islamique.
of the Islamic
Quand
revolution.
vous entendez ça, vous
When you
dites
hear
qu'ils se
that,
trompent.
therefore you feel that they're wrong.
The ultimate judge is basically the extent to which governments are accepted by their respective publics. After all, these are the norms. These are the rules of the game elsewhere in the world, and there's no reason to continue to think of us as somehow being different. So let's say that elections are organized. And let's assume that Muslim Brotherhood wins. Muslim Brotherhood then has to govern. Governance has certain requirements. They have to lead a government that's responsive to the needs of people if they would want to expect to continue to be viable politically. They should be judged by the same rules. They should live by the same rules like everyone else. They too should accept outcome of elections. They too should accept elections as permanent element of the political framework.
Mais vous faites, Monsieur le Premier ministre, vous faites une différence entre
And do
les
you make
frères
a difference
musulmans
between the
en
Muslim
Égypte,
Brothers in
le
Egypt
Hamas
and the
à
Hamas
Gaza?
in Gaza?
Ce ne sont pas les mêmes
They're not the same
islamistes.
Islamists?
So based on what we know about the genesis of the Hamas movement, I believe it's a part of the overall framework that's Muslimism. But the point is, if I'm accepting of the notion that Hamas take part in Palestinian elections, why should I be opposed to or averse to the notion of Muslim Brotherhood contesting elections, taking part in elections elsewhere in the world? The issue is really not this. And the issue, obviously, is the alternative. What is the alternative to this? Not to have elections, not to have democratic processes, to continue to rule by decree under the rubric of let's have stability, override all other considerations, or what is as bad, should we go for elections and rig them in order to ensure an outcome that is to liking of X, Y, or Z? That's not really the way it should be. We should have elections that are inclusive and open, transparent and fair. And we should all be prepared to live with the outcome of those elections. That outcome may be inconvenient. You know, don't misunderstand me. It's not that I am in accord politically, socioculturally, with the platform of the Muslim Brotherhood or that of Hamas for that matter. But the fact that we disagree politically does not mean that we should eliminate political pluralism. That's a form of political pluralism. People should be allowed an opportunity to judge and choose for themselves their leaders. I mean, that's what democracy is about.
En 2006, les Occidentaux ont choisi et ont décidé de
In
boycotter
2006,
encore plus le
they
Hamas.
decided
Donc,
to
en
boycott
refusant
Hamas and to
de ce fait le
refuse
résultat des
the
élections.
results
Est-ce
of
que
the
c'était une
elections,
erreur
in fact,
tragique?
by this fact. Is not this a tragic mistake?
I think the premise of the question is not right, as a matter of fact, and you can verify this. Hamas, when it won parliamentary elections in 2006, attempted through a process of consultation to form a government that included other nations. I took part in those consultations with Hamas, and there is a record for this. And you will find, if you review the record, including by talking to Hamas leadership itself, that at the time we raised fundamental issues related to security, for example. And I asked, what view would they take in terms of the security doctrine that should be adopted by the Palestinian Authority? And they did not provide a satisfactory answer to that question. And they are yet to provide a satisfactory answer to that question, I believe. And it is only fair if you disagree with a party that has won election on an issue that's as fundamental as a security doctrine that should guide your work as Palestinian Authority. It's only fair to expect no participation on the basis of disagreement of such important principle. We did not choose to not participate because they're Hamas. As a matter of fact, a year later, exactly a year later, I personally took part in National Unity Government as finance minister in that government with Hamas leadership and participation. So it's not aversion to working with Hamas in a framework that unifies us. It's aversion to continue to try things the same way and expect different results. It's really, I believe, time for us to look at the basics here. What we need, if you're asking about our own domestic situation, fundamentally, is agreement on a security doctrine that's consistent with what we're trying to do, which is to create and establish the state of Palestine. If we can agree on that, I believe we're ready for a unity government or a centrist government.
Avant de parler du processus
Before
de paix
speaking
entre
about the peace
l'autorité
process
palestinienne et
between the
l'israélien,
Palestinian
peut-être
Authority and
Juste une dernière
Israel,
question sur ce que vous disiez